Let's start the easy way. Things will get complicated soon enough. Talk about yourself. Talk about the things you like.
Why me?
Because you're always the one who starts, apart from being born a few minutes later than me.
All right. I love the full moon at night.
So do I.
I love sunsets.
Everyone loves sunsets.
I love the sea.
Ah, the sea. But I love the coast even more, the seam joining the water with the land.
And then soaring over it like a bird, far, far away.
Yes, I love it when we are together, but sometimes I also like being lonesome.
You mean alone, not lonesome.
But then again, sitting down at the piano with you.
And being carried away into heaven.
But I always love to push our piano stools away and go and raise hell.
Yes, when we go into a boutique and act as if there were nothing more vital in all the universe than a new dress.
Vanity can be such fun.
So can hard work.
Both can.
Yes, both.
If we weren't twins, we wouldn't argue more. We would simply have more distance between us.
On the contrary, there would be much more rivalry between us.
What, rivalry? Oh, excuse me. I just come out with these things. Suya takes longer to think, and then she talks longer.
No comment.
Still, I insist on my principles more than Suya does.
But then I have more principles than Guher.
People always think I take life less seriously than Suya, but that isn't true at all.
People always think I take life more seriously than Guher, but then that isn't true at all.
I'm just more emotional than Suya.
I just have my emotions better in control than Guher.
From the age of 5, we attended the conservatory in Istanbul. The director himself taught us from the very beginning. He came from Vienna, and that almost made us feel as if we were learning from someone who had known Mozart and Beethoven himself. At least he had lived in their city, unlike us living in Istanbul and surrounded by people with completely different interests. Naturally, we later came to the realization that Istanbul is actually everywhere all over the world. After a while, people have something more important to attend to. Except for us, music always stayed the focal point of our lives. Our father wanted us to be educated in French, as he had spent a long time living in Belgium. And so he sent us to a Roman Catholic boarding school, Notre-Dame du Sillon. This was a convent up above the Bosporus with very austere architecture.
The upbringing there was even more austere than the architecture. If you uttered just one word of Turkish, or were just 1 minute late for lessons, you had to do penance, a whole evening in detention doing extra French.
We were only allowed to go home on weekends and only if our grades were good.
Whenever we could tear ourselves away from the pianos, the three of us enjoyed going to the cinema. Actually, movies, not cinema, because Murat loved horror movies. Guher didn't mind. But I hated horror movies, along with everything involving violence and conflict. So I gave in to avoid conflict. But often enough, I would run out of the cinema in the middle of the film because I simply couldn't take it any longer. Since then, it's been clear to me, compromise doesn't pay, especially not with art.
By the mid-60s, we had developed our piano technique to the point where we were allowed to go to the conservatory in Paris. Of course, we could speak French already, but that was all the nuns had prepared us for.
There were so many things I wanted to discover then, so many things I wanted to know. I dreamt of being a mixture of Simone de Beauvoir, Grace Kelly, and Audrey Hepburn. Clever, elegant, and charming.
Bach was our favorite composer at the time, so then we wanted to get to know also his language and his country, which is why we went to the Odenwald School. That was a boarding school where playing the piano and painting were taken just as seriously as Latin and logarithms.
Then came the upheavals of the late 60s. We spent the afternoons arguing fortissimo, the evenings playing the piano's mezzoforte, and the nights doing our homework pianissimo.
After graduating from school, we went to study in Frankfurt. At the Academy of Music, we of course studied the same instrument, piano, but we took different subjects at the university. We were both heading for the same destination, but we each wanted to find our own way there.
Those were turbulent times. For me, it was a time of important but also painful experiences. I joined a group of students who were occupied with the problems faced by foreigners living in Germany. But I have to admit that it all got to be too much for me after a while. I was powerless when Turkish people were forced by slumlords to pay a fortune to live in hovels. I did what I was able to, but I actually wasn't able to achieve anything. I was powerless. Some fellow students were terribly committed, and they even tried to persuade me to give up music. Today is no longer about sonatas and symphonies, they said. Today is about changing the world. I was very torn, but it finally dawned on me that I just had to get back to doing something I was sure of, however hard that would be, something I knew how to cope with. My language was not Turkish, French, or German. My language was music.
In our early Frankfurt days, my world revolved around music. Music gave me strength, and I gave my strength back to music. I consciously closed my mind to everything else. But once I had passed my examinations, it suddenly struck me, my God, there had to be something else beyond just piano keys. I started getting involved in the new ideas of the time. That is anything but easy if you have spent years inhabiting a world where different laws and rules apply to those in the real world that other people perceive. I was looking for fresh contacts, and I renewed old ones. For a time, I joined the entourage of Cohn-Bendit. We had been together at the Odenwald School. The turmoil of those times is still in my blood. For many people, that turmoil is more a taste on their tongue than a real stirring in their hearts. For me, it's different, although there were some less auspicious moments too. On one occasion, the water cannon hit me, and then I was pushed about by the police. I ended up in the hospital, suffering from shock and concussion. What am I doing here? I wondered. Who am I? What can I do? And what do I want to do? When I was released from the hospital, I had gained a new insight. A carpenter and a bricklayer can work on building the same house, but they can't switch roles. Music was to be the medium for my message. That wasn't resignation. That was the start for me.
Through friends, we were introduced to Rudolf Serkin when he was on a European tour, and the same friends arranged for us to audition for him.
Serkin was a truly great man. He made us feel so insignificant.
Only our stage fright was remarkable. He was so full of nervous energy that you could have lit half the city with it.
But he liked our playing and he said, I will give you lessons.
That meant for us the big chance.
That meant for us America for the first time.
That meant for us the Curtis Institute in Philadelphia.
The Curtis Institute was right in the center of Philadelphia, but it seemed quite cut off from the noise and the life of the city. This school was an island, just as Notre Dame de Sion and the Odenwald School had been.
Serkin's teaching studio could have been something right out of a fairy tale.
That old colonial-style building aroused awe, but not fear. We all knew each other, and the professors treated their students with respect, like colleagues.
It was like one big family. Once again, we had a family.
But you could only manage the course by working at least 14 hours a day, so I persuaded myself, and Suya encouraged me in this, and in turn I encouraged her.
One day, a fellow student startled me with the confession that he had spent months trying to attract my attention. I felt ashamed rather than flattered. He could have been crawling on the floor or dancing on the ceiling as far as I was concerned. I wouldn't have noticed. My world was pure music, and that meant pure happiness. That was all I needed.
Philadelphia was also quite startling to us at first. Just 2 blocks down from our hotel, there was one part of town. We had never seen such poverty before. I suddenly felt as if we had spent our lives up till now in a gilded cage, confined but also protected. Here, young people were free. I spent several days just crying. If we hadn't been together, I don't know if I could have made it through.
Our escape always was music and each other. If you have no defenses, escape is best. We had each other, as we always had done. That made everything easier and harder.
New York in the 70s. Everyone wanted it all.
We were less ambitious. We just wanted to learn the Russian piano technique. But they didn't teach that at Curtis. That's why we made our pilgrimage to New York, to the Juilliard School.
From the Gilded Cage straight into the Lion's Den.
Actually, the Lioness's Den. You see, we wanted to get into the classes of the renowned but feared Adele Marcus, because she taught the Russian style.
She graciously permitted us to audition for her, although she held a frightfully low opinion of women, especially as pianists.
And we were the only women accepted for her class.
Already at that age, it was clear to me. To make the one big dream come true meant denying all the other dreams. In my mind, I have often walked down the paths not taken. I have never had a single regret, but I have certainly reflected often enough.
By day, I only had eyes for my keys and my notes, which made the evenings so vital. Eager to see it all, I raced from Carnegie Hall to the Met and back, listening, soaking it up, being there.
The Juilliard School was anything but a gilded cage. It was more a music factory with 600 apprentices all fighting to become a master. Me too, of course.
When we talked privately, we didn't swoon over Robert Redford or Mick Jagger, but over contests and concert agencies. No one could concede how few of these glittering dreams would ever come true. Everyone was convinced the others are going to have a hard time, but me, I will make it.
Had we known in those days that we would be performing under Karajan just a few years later, we would have been much more relaxed.
No, much more agitated.
Before leaving America, Sir and I did our master examinations, each separately as a soloist. That meant a lot to us. We always performed together and we would have it no other way. But this contradictory yearning to be simultaneously independent of each other and yet together is a thread running through our whole life.
In 1979, we returned to Europe and found instant recognition in the music world. In the very first year back, we won the German music contest.
We were so elated.
But we soon came back down to earth.
Being back to earth meant chugging cross-country in our old Beetle from one concert hall to the next and living out of a suitcase.
The acoustics in these halls were often bad, the grand pianos were even worse, and on top of it all, excruciatingly out of tune.
Which threw our spirits out of tune too.
In that situation, there is only one solution. Keep calm and do your best for the audience.
Once Suya and I reach the point where we melt into the music and become one with it, those are the most wonderful moments of my life. And I always pray that the audience will feel it too, and share these moments with us.
For me, life is at its most intense when we are working, particularly when we are studying a new piece, a fresh start again. To get a proper feeling for the piece, we keep changing parts at this stage and later too. Sometimes Guher plays first piano, and sometimes I do. That way, each audience receives a premiere performance, a premiere every day, for the audience and for us too.
Press reviews are essential. Still, it is rather strange when one publication describes the evening as a stellar performance, and the other as a solar eclipse.
I am my own harshest critic, but I suppose that's what most people think of themselves. Reviews are like horoscopes. If they're good, there must be some truth in them. If they're bad, well, no one believes everything they read in the press, do they? Being able to switch off, that's also my problem. But how can you learn to switch off? That's like saying, relax as hard as you can. Although I would so love to experience a real void. I seem to have 20,000 volts going through me all the time, under some kind of tension that I can't shake off. Guher and I want to take a whole year off sometime. We want to try and discover how to switch off this energy, just like switching off a bedside lamp.
But the rhythm dictated by the concert agencies and the recording companies was not our rhythm. It all seemed too fast and too flashy. We wanted meaning and depth, not glitz and glitter.
Well, why not both?
Nonetheless, much of what the PR people suggested we should do seemed more like Las Vegas than Lincoln Center to us.
In the meantime, we have mellowed a little, in our opinions, but not in our work.
Anyone who travels as much as we do has trouble defining home.
We have several homes, which really means none at all.
Still, Turkey has come to represent a base for me.
We were so young when we came to Western Europe that we didn't discover Turkey until after we had discovered America. But now that I know both worlds, I would also like to mediate between the two, in more than just a musical sense.
And yet music always remains the center of our lives. When we go on stage, all the audiences expect something spectacular. Spectacular feats every night.
Oh no, the spectacular thing is that it keeps going on. We have no other way. The way is the goal.
Wherever we are, the first thing people look for is how alike we are.
The fate of all twins.
First, it's the family that makes comparisons, then strangers, sometimes even scientists. Where are the similarities? Our figures, our characters?
For us, the differences are much more important.
Although, of course, we still have a deep sense of belonging together.
And an intense need for independence.
Both.
Yes, both.
After a rapid beginning, the career of Gürer and Zürer has continued with a string of international successes. The top recording companies have recorded them in most of the important two-piano repertoire, both with and without orchestra, and major channels have featured them on television. The opening concert of the Vienna Festival with the Vienna Philharmonic under Zubin Mehta was broadcast live by Eurovision. Leading newspapers have given them rave reviews.
Győr and Suher Pekinel have been supporting numerous music projects over the years. The most important three amongst these projects promote musical education. The Orff Schulwerk project Anatolia and the Tevital School for Highly Gifted Children complement one another. While the Orff Schulwerk, or the Orff approach, promotes music education in kindergartens and primary schools all over Anatolia, the Tevital High School focuses on highly gifted students for a balanced education, which allows the individual to develop their special abilities and talents through art and music. The objective here is also to ensure future graduates will support the arts in their professional life. The project Young Musicians on World Stages gives outstanding young musicians from all over Turkey the opportunity through scholarships to continue their studies with the best pedagogues and musicians at the most important conservatories of Europe, mostly in Germany. The main goal of the project is to find young and extraordinary talents and provide them with the opportunity to expand their artistic identities so that they can compete globally. In addition, to prepare them for an international career, Young Musicians on World Stages organizes concerts where musicians gain stage experience as soloists or as part of chamber music ensembles, prepare themselves for a world career. Chamber music is a main emphasis of the program. Not only does it promote and support the musicians' education as competent and confident soloists, but it opens a door to a deeper intellectual and analytical platform where new and diverse musical interpretations are always being shared. This allows the young musicians to make music of the highest quality. In the 8 years since it starts, the young musicians involved in the project have won 7 first prize, 4 second and 2 third prizes in international competitions. In 2016, the 20-year-old violinist Veriko Čumburice won the acclaimed 15th International Wieniawski Violin Competition as the youngest participant in the history of the competition. In June 2016, the trio Arte, which consists of 3 musicians from the project, won first prize at the chamber music competition Pietro Argento in Italy and played with star violinist Gerard Cosset at the 44th International Music Festival in Istanbul. Győr and Suher Pekinel will continue to support young and extraordinary talents since they feel it is their duty, as the result of their international career, to pass on their valuable experience and knowledge to young musicians.